Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, and I want to do a little something different today. I don't think I've ever actually done this before on the channel, and this is really interesting. As you know, we spend a lot of time analyzing politics and culture, reacting to headlines, breaking down decisions, exposing contradictions. But have you ever stopped and wondered why so many political leaders seem to act so irrationally and so inconsistently? I mean, think about it, whether it's Trump derangement syndrome or just the way certain politicians react automatically to anything Trump does, or even, how figures on the right suddenly turn on one another. You look at it and you think, what the heck's going on here? These aren't stupid people. They're smart, they're powerful, they're highly educated. So why do they say things so often that make so little sense? Why do they contradict themselves? Why do they self sabotage? Usually I'm reacting to events, but today I wanted to dig a little deeper beneath ideology, beneath party politics, and ask a more fundamental question. What's actually driving these leaders from the inside? And that's why I'm so excited about today's conversation. I'm joined by Dave Wheatus. He's a counselor who works closely with leaders, and he's the author of the book, The Spiritually Healthy Leader. Dave helps leaders understand what he calls their ruling passions, the deeper motivations that govern how people think, decide, and act, often without them even realizing. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. So,
Mm.
Dave, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be with you.
Well, it's an honor to have you. So,
Mm.
you work with leaders behind the scenes. When we see leaders making decisions that, at least for us, seem irrational or inconsistent,
hmm
what's usually going on beneath the surface?
Well, I think you have to look at what does the leader say his values are, and what are the real values? What are the motivations of the heart? So we often talk about the values that we have, but there's often a great disparity between what we say and
Mhm.
then what in fact is happening, right? Um,
Right.
what are the real values that that are the drivers? And it's really revealed more by what we do than what we say. So all of us, including our political leaders, make decisions based on motives of the heart. And when you see the decisions that contradict the values, that clues you into what the true value is.
Oh, interesting.
So, and,
It
and just in politics, many leaders, as well as media, I was thinking about this media, right? They're driven by a results oriented narrative, not by the truth.
right,
So it's the narrative that controls. And what's controlling the narrative? It's the motive of the heart, what's really going on.
right, right. You mentioned, so talking about the issue of the heart, you talk about too you use this term ruling passions,
Yeah.
which I love. What does that mean in plain language here?
Yeah, I define a ruling passion as that which we most passionately pursue above all other things. Another way to say it is, what are our ultimate commitments in our heart and in our life? And the answer to that question really reveals the idols of our heart, and this is what can sabotage us. So if you ask, for example, believers, you say, "What are you most passionate about?" They're going to say something like the Bible or Jesus or God.
Mhm.
If you ask politicians, "What are you most passionate about?" Most politicians are going to say, well, I got into this to help people or to make life better, to make our country better, to make the community better. But when you peel back the layers of our hearts and ask and find out what are you really most passionate about, it's often things like this: being successful, getting love, being
Mhm.
affirmed, being in control, getting respect, adventure, avoiding rejection, things like that. And
Right,
those desires are not inherently wrong, and in
right,
fact, they can be God given. But when they become primary motives of the heart and ultimate commitments, they function as idols and can rule us.
right, right. Is that why we see so often leaders contradict their stated values, particularly on the campaign trail once they get into power?
Sure, it's one of the reasons. Or there's a narrative that's driving them. And don't bother me with the facts. I'm going to stick to the narrative. We see that every single day in the news, right? And we
Right.
see people doing that all the time.
Right. Yeah. What are some of the what kinds of ruling passions tend to show up most often in particularly political leadership?
I would think in political leadership, it would be things like this. I want to be admired. I want to be
Mm,
seen. I want to have impact. I'll be in control. I'll be powerful. I'll be respected. These are kind of subtle, maybe not so subtle, ruling passions that would govern. And that would be the a primary motivation. And what you would see would be people who would say, hey, I'm just here to serve the people. I'm just here to help. But the ruling passion is really driving them.
right. Right. It's funny when the way you're talking. It that would mean that we're in effect dealing with the same, shall we say, passion pattern across both the left and the right. So it's just manifesting itself. Those passions, if I'm tracking with you correctly,
Yeah.
those passions are simply manifesting themselves differently, but the passions themselves are the same, whether it's the political left or political right. Am I tracking with you correctly?
Yeah, you're tracking with me. Absolutely. Everyone, whether you're on the left or right or wherever you are, we have longings, right? We have God-given longings like affirmation, for example. You think about a kid who says, "Daddy, watch me," right? He
Right,
longs for
right,
affirmation. That's a good thing. The
right.
trouble is when they become ultimate commitments in our life or ruling
Mm,
passions, they can become distorted, disordered, and they end up driving us. And here's the
right.
danger. We can manipulate others or try to manipulate the truth in order to get our ruling passion met. So if
Mm,
I am most concerned with getting affirmation from you, how am I going to behave toward you? Or
right.
getting you to respect me? So then I can become manipulative and not even know it.
Have you ever? I'll throw you a little curveball here. Have you ever done a study on or reflected on the passions in say J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings? Just with the desire of power in the ring and the way it literally destroyed Gollum
Yes.
at the end, and then in some kind of mysterious force, that force, God, what have you, just used that that uncontrollable passion to actually destroy the ring.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, right? Because even Frodo couldn't give it up.
That's a great observation, and I haven't really thought that through, but it's great. But think about this. Like I work a lot with pastors. I have an organization called Serving Leaders Ministries, and we have pastors, ministry leaders who would say, "Hey, I want to be faithful to my wife. I want to be faithful to God," and yet it's always in the news that we hear somebody's fallen, and the question
Sure.
becomes why. I mean, that's the question I'm always dealing with. Why am I doing that which is antithetical to what I believe, to my heart, to God? I self sabotage. And the answer often is because we don't know what's really driving us. We don't know what our ruling passion is. And I'm willing to do anything to get that ruling passion satisfied, even go outside of the values that I have or what scripture would say.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the subtitle of your book, right?
Right.
The idea of self sabotage. That's what
Yes.
I find so fascinating because again, it seems I'm listening to this and I've just got all these token images in my head. It,
Yeah.
it, it, the idea of how do you turn the passions from enslavement to freedom? It seems to me that's like the undercurrent drama that you're uncovering
Right.
here.
Right.
There's a passion that leads to freedom, but there are passions, of course, that ironically enslave us.
That's right. Now here's the tricky part, Steve. When you take a good thing and make it an ultimate thing,
Mm, mm,
that's when
mm,
it
mm.
becomes problematic. That's when it becomes trouble, and it becomes
An
an idol
idol.
in our heart. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
when I say, "Hey, listen, I just want to help people," that sounds really good, and that is a good thing. But when that becomes ultimate in my life,
yeah.
what will I do in order to fulfill that? Will I
Right,
lie? Will I cheat? Will I steal in order to quote help people? And
right,
you can apply that in multiple ways.
right,
But
right. Well, yeah. In a sense, we kind of just politically we saw that with USAID when it was uncovered that it was just human compassion and for the suffering of others, the legit like international
right,
suffering of others
right,
was used as a veneer and a cover for self
yeah,
profit, and it's yeah, it's
yeah.
pretty at a taxpayer expense too to make it even
That's
worse.
right.
But
And so the danger is not knowing what your passions are, what your ruling passion is. So I can say all day long, look, my passion is great. I love God. I want to serve Him. But if I don't know that my ruling passion really is something else,
Right.
then that's where
Right.
we get into self-sabotage or sabotaging our relationships,
Yeah.
our jobs, our ministries. And look, the newspapers are filled with people who have fallen, in
Yeah.
quotes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's sad.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. Yeah. The pharaonic nature of the passions in that sense. Yeah. How does a person's worldview shape
Yeah.
which passions end up ruling them?
Yeah, as a Christian, I want my worldview, my view of God, my view of purpose, my view of meaning, the gospel, to be informed by the truth as defined by what God's word says about things, right? So I personally want the lordship of Christ in my life. If my worldview is informed by secular values, then my passions are going to be shaped by those exact values of success, of power, admiration,
Mhm.
greed, whatever it is, and then I'll live according to those values, and they'll be antithetical to really what's in best interest of yourself
Yeah.
and God Himself, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. The human flourishing
Yeah,
element. Yeah. Yeah. They stifle that kind of human flourishing. I came that you might be free, right? And free indeed. Yeah, right.
right, right.
So obviously this is and this is what I find so interesting here. IQ, intelligence, right? Professional status and so forth. These don't protect leaders from self-sabotage. If anything, it could I take it can contribute to the bondage, as it were.
I think so because you can be blinded by your own intelligence or your perceived good intentions. Most of us are walking around, even the people who we would say are on the political side that we're not on, right? We're the
Right.
left. Nobody's walking around most of the time saying, "I'm going to do evil." It's more like, "No, I have the best intentions in the world." But to
Right.
protect
Right.
ourselves from self-sabotage, we need to understand what our ruling passions are. What
Right.
drives me? What informs me? What is the motivation of my heart? And to understand that I can actually be motivated by a stronger desire to be admired, to be in control, or to be respected. And so intelligence or experience does not exempt us from those
Yeah.
things. We have to cultivate awareness and honesty and be in love with the truth, really.
Yeah, I read it wasn't a study so much. I think it was a summary of a study that found that actually people with higher IQs, higher intelligence are harder to deal with in this area because they can employ that IQ and
Yep,
that acumen to defend themselves and get around your arguments and or all that kind of stuff. So they're actually harder to
that's right.
deal with.
And Steve,
Yeah.
we have a capacity for self-deception,
Yeah.
right? I can lie to myself about myself and my motives and not even
Right.
see it, so we can be blinded.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How do one balance? I mean, I get this all the time from our viewers, who it's just so easy to become cynical
Yep.
towards all these, so-called leaders, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And we're talking, we are going through, as a populist revolt. It's going on all over the world. It's not just here
Right.
where populations have increasingly lost confidence and trust in their leadership. Politics is just one area. The pulpit versus the pew, they're experiencing that
That's right.
right now.
Sure.
So, how can people avoid becoming cynical
Mhm.
while still being clear-eyed about uh, leadership failures?
I think it's having a realistic view of one's own heart and that mankind, for example. We need to understand that every one of us is a sinner and has
Yeah,
capacity not only to do great evil, but to deceive ourselves about our own inclinations. I think it's Solzhenitsyn who said something like the line between good and evil,
yeah,
right, doesn't run through the other politicians, it runs through my heart.
right heart. Yeah,
So there's no leader who's not subject to temptation, to have a ruling passion that is antithetical to truth or antithetical to God's calling, or to walk in accordance with God and His will. For me personally, I founded Serving Leaders Ministries almost 20 years ago, and I've worked with ministry leaders all over the world, and I've seen some of the most horrendous kinds of abuse and
mm,
behavior and evil. And yet I'm not cynical because I understand what sin is.
Right.
I understand how twisted we can be, and I'm not saying everybody there. I know how twisted I can be, but I also understand the gospel and the power of God to change our lives.
Right.
So that gives me hope, but I'm never surprised. No, I mean, I've heard the weirdest, horrible things in my office, and yet I just okay. That's exactly what God said about our hearts. So
Mhm.
there's a redemptive aspect here that keeps me from being cynical.
Yeah, yeah, that I love that, a redemptive aspect that keeps you from being cynical. It would be like I've heard people say, "Oh, I've given up on the church," or that something like
Right.
that because of the very real hypocrisies that we all face.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
but they also they'll tend to be conservative. So I'll be like, it sounds to me like you're arguing like a leftist. You're blaming racism on a race.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Right? You're trying to concentrate sin, as it were, in a particular place, when in point of fact that place is under the dominion of sin, and you're
Yeah.
missing that.
That's
How it
exactly.
how
That's
it
exactly
it's a respecter of none, as it were. And
right.
I guess, but it is true. This is, I mean, we saw it obviously in Corinthians. It's just from the very beginning, we've always found that stumbling to the kingdom is the ultimate kingdom is the way forward. It's
Yeah.
we don't strut.
Well,
So,
it's not a cliche to say that the church is a hospital for sinners.
right, right,
We use the word sin, and we don't really understand. No, but what that means when people hurt me, that when people do bad things, that's what we're talking about. Like the
mhm,
reality of that is important to understand. That's what keeps me from saying, "Oh, I'm leaving the church," or I'm
right,
giving up.
right,
Giving up.
right, right. Yeah, because you are going to meet some pretty corrupt doctors over the years. Hopefully, you won't give up on hospitals. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I
Right.
mean, I did a video today on, I don't know if you saw it, Dave. Well, there was two nurses that were wishing very much ill. One on Caroline Levitt, and the other
Ah.
one was advocating actually poisoning ICE agents. They were putting up TikTok videos. They've been obviously relieved of duties, as it were. They've both been fired. But again, I haven't seen anyone come out and say, "Well, I'm not going to a hospital anymore." It's like,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's more a malady of the heart, not the institution per se.
That's right.
From a Christian worldview,
Mhm.
let's think more positively. What does it look like when a leader's motivations are properly ordered? It's I was really impressed with JD Vance when he was talking about ordered loves. I'm
Mhm.
not,
Mhm.
I'm not to be a jerk, but given the last vice president we had, I was like, wow. He starts mentioning Aquinas and all that.
Yeah. Right.
um
Right.
yeah, but I was really excited to see that. I was also surprised at how many so-called Christian leaders, obviously they tend to be on the left, uh, didn't even seem to be familiar with the concept. But I mean, this is something that the church has reflected on for centuries.
Right.
And so, from your vantage point, what does it look like when a leader's motivations, their loves, are properly ordered?
Yeah, it looks like, I think, in a very practical level, recognizing the capacity that I have for evil, for sin, and also being aware of the motivations of my own heart, and then reordering the desires of my heart to love God and obey God and His calling on my life. And so I can see through a biblical worldview. What am I called to do? I'm called to walk in truth and love people. Love people. What does that
Yeah.
look like? And then realizing I don't have any capacity to do it on my own. Matter of fact, my tendency is towards sin. It is toward rebellion, and therefore to be able to come before God and say, God, will you change my heart?
Right.
Right, right, and would you let me love what you love? Let me pursue truth regardless of where the truth takes me, because I want to be a lover of truth, a lover of God, and be able to have an open heart to God to say, transform me first and
Right.
foremost.
Wow. Again, I'm also thinking of just when I get asked questions about, you know, how do I've been asked a lot, how do I not hate a lot of these political opponents,
Yeah,
as it were?
yeah,
And you're drawing what you're drawing out. I wish I could articulate it the way you did, but but that I basically said, look, it's okay. I think it's okay to hate what they do,
Hmm.
but you can't hate the person, right?
Right.
You can't. The moment you do that, then all of a sudden, I've heard it put it best: forgiveness is for the forgiver, right? You start eating yourself alive when you
Yeah.
start hating
You're right.
others. So it's self sabotage, quite
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
I-
For,
if there were one takeaway you
yeah.
wanted people to have when they watch political leaders like
Yeah.
that, what would it be?
Well, I think two things. One thing that just let me respond to what you said. I think when we see people that we quote hate, or on the other side, I think what happens if you can develop compassion and always ask the question, what is happening? Why is this person engaging in this behavior? Like, what happened in their life to make this important?
Yeah.
Because I like to say all behavior makes sense when you understand context.
Yes.
And the context may be misperceived, it may be off, but there's a reason why people do what they do. And then I see myself, look, I've got my own faults. I see somebody do something stupid, I can give you 5 more times stupid than when in my own heart. So the one takeaway I would say is it would be that there's redemption and there's transformation. And when we go to God and say, God, I can't do it, but you can, and we give
Hmm.
him permission to
Yeah.
change our hearts and transform our hearts, that's real and that's lasting and it can happen.
I love it. Wow, that's awesome. What a ministry you have, Dave. Gee, incredible. Gang, make sure to click on the link below. Get Dave's wonderful book, The Spiritually Healthy Leader. It'd be a great gift for yourself, pastor, or leader in your life. Boy, Dave, I could talk to you for hours. This is awesome stuff. Thanks for being with us, and all God's richest blessings on your ministry.
Steve, thank you so much, and his richest blessings on you as well.